Well, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Andrelczyk Amusement Academy. If you are new to the stream, my name is Brian Andrelczyk, and I am a real life theme park designer who also plays RCT. So I am here to teach you about realistic coaster building, because I'm a huge coaster fan, and talk about the history of coasters and what has led us up to now, and talk a little about history and just what the different nature of each of these manufacturers are all about. So, if you caught last stream, we did hypercoasters. We did a collection of 11, I think, in total, different manufacturers for hypercoasters. And this week, upon request, we are doing wooden roller coasters. Now, there's not as much difference within wooden coasters as there are in hypercoasters. There are very distinctive differences with the hypercoasters and just a lot of steel coasters in general. Wooden coasters are a little less so. That's not to say nothing at all. There's definitely some defining characteristics of each of the types, but um, they all have kind of descended from a few different places. And that's just the nature of designers moving from one spot to another. So today we're going to look at coasters by Dinn, CCI, GCI. We're going to look at two of those from GCI, kind of the earlier ones, the more traditional designs, and then also the modern, newer designs. We're going to look at two from Gravity Group, their kind of small junior variety, and then also their full size. We're going to look at Vekoma, who only built a couple, but still notable. We'll also look at Intamin. First, their regular wooden coasters, of which they built a few, and then their prefabricated models, which they built even less, but we'll take a look at those. And then finally, S&S, who also only built a couple, but we will still take a look at those. There's a number of other ones I could do too. RCCA, certainly Rocky Mountain, and a number of other folks, but these are kind of the core ones that I want to stick with. There's a distinction that needs to be made too between manufacturers, designers, makes, and all of that sort of thing, because I feel like they're used interchangeably pretty often, but it's not quite the same. So, for example, we already lose the stream. It, hang tight. Hang tight. Okay. Get this back. Okay. Once we're back, let me know when you guys have it again. There we go. I think we're back now. Can you guys hear everything once again? Hopefully things have picked up. Um, for some reason, my internet loves to drop within the first 30 minutes of streaming every single time. Um, so we'll fix that at some point. Alright, reconnected. There we go. You guys should be able to see things now, so if you could, let me know in the chat that you can see things, and we'll continue along. One of these days we'll fix all that internet stuff. Cool. Alrighty, we are back in business. If it drops out again, just hang tight. We'll get it back. My internet just sucks for whatever reason. But anyway, so we were in the process of talking about difference between manufacturer versus designer versus builder, etc. So, like Dinn Corporation, which is Charlie Dinn, you'll see a lot of that referred to as Summers and Dinn. So Summers was the engineer, and Dinn was the designer, so they kind of partnered up, but then kind of went their separate ways later on. And Yeah, good choice for Mean Streak because actually that's where we're headed first. So we will take our first foray out into the world of RCDB and let us take a look at the coasters made by Dinn. So a little background: Charlie Dinn of Dinn Corporation. He started as the director of construction at Kings Island, and he was partially responsible for the Beast, which is a heck of a way to start out because the Beast was more or less in-house for Kings Island. But he left and he started his own company in 1983 and partnered up with the Summers Engineering firm, also in Ohio, and started their coaster company. So you can see here, there's 10 coasters, and only 4 of them are operating, unfortunately. So we have some different ones, and now there's not a lot of kind of specific traits that you can attribute to Dinn coasters. So they kind of vary. So, for example, like Cyclone here at Magic Mountain, which coincidentally had the only trains by B&M on a wooden coaster. That's based off of the Coney Island Cyclone. Same with the Georgia Cyclone and some others there. And then Raging Wolf Bob's was based off of an older layout also. Predator is sort of a double out and back. And all these different kind of things. But to me, the ones that really kind of defined Dinn were Hercules at Dorney Park, Mean Streak, and Texas Giant. Texas Giant and Mean Streak were the two big guys. So these were giant three-sided triangular layouts with huge drops and pretty long layouts. And these became pretty infamous for being pretty rough also, and they have both since been redone by Rocky Mountain. So we're going to start with one of these guys, I think, and we will begin there. So so as not to take your first shots too early, I'm going to remember to go back to RCT. As we've said before, if I forget to go back from the database to the game, please let me know in the chat and also take a shot. So let's begin with this. These coasters kind of varied in which trains they used. For the most part, they used PTC, which is Philadelphia Toboggan Company trains. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's go right in the middle here, because this one's gonna be big, and we'll start 3 up. Never start on the ground as is before, and there we go. So all right, yes, there is a drinking game now. If I forget to go back from the database over to RCT on the stream, then you guys take a shot because I am supporting everyone's alcoholism. Okay, so the first thing for Mean Streak is that the transfer track was on the front of the station. That's not to say that it has to be there. The only reason it was there is just proximity to the service road. It can be front or back, but what it does do is slide horizontally. So there's no switch track, there's no anything else. There's just however many trains it is, you put that many pieces of track on the side, and you're good. So if this has 3 trains, then you've got 1 train in the station, 2nd train there on red, 3rd train here on yellow, and then you'll just make sure that you have the ability for this to slide over 2 spaces on the side on this side. So that's how we do that. We're going to go with 6 deep this time, just because that's going to hold a 7-car PTC train. Generally, you're going to see 6-car, but some of these bigger ones had 7. But that was you can kind of go 6 or 7, either one. We'll start out with just a little bit of statement here coming on to the lift hill. You can hit lift hills at speed, so we have done B&Ms and things that we have the brake at the bottom so that it always engages the chain lift at the same time. In this case, we are not really worried about that, just because this is the way of these kind of rides. Do RCCA. If I get to it, I will. If we finish all these other layouts and I have the time for it, I would definitely do it. because RCCA is distinctive and infamous and terrible. So it's worth the doing, I think. All right, so we're not going to go too huge. We'll go this big. Well, that's big for RCT. Let's go ahead and not blue. We're gonna go to brown. So we are sticking with the brown. Generally, older coasters did get whitewashed, but the newer coasters, if they're a wooden structure, they're going to be the standard wood color, mostly because it's useful for inspections. So that's the reason that you see them as they are. So Mean Streak, towards the end of its life, put some trim brakes down the first drop, and this happened with a lot of Dinn coasters that just couldn't really handle um, the intensity of the layouts, and they didn't wear terribly well. So because of that, pause this. Because of that, they added trim brakes, which kind of dilute the entire ride as a whole. But that's from a maintenance standpoint, you get it. It's not any coaster enthusiast favorite, I don't think, but we're kind of left with that. So Mean Streak had trims all the way down the first drop, but let's take a look at what the speed looks like around the corner. I will say I liked Mean Streak. I really liked Mean Streak. It wasn't like a top 10 kind of coaster, but it also was all right. Like, I didn't hate it, and I know it got a lot of hate, which is probably fair because it wasn't the most comfortable. But if you rode in the front seat, it was actually totally fine. Okay, so we're gonna do kind of a couple of different turns here. So this first turn, we've got a nice bit of gliding to it, and we're not going to go down the whole way just yet. On the diagonal, like we've said before, you don't really have to space in your low slope elements here. It really is fine if you just go regular as is. So we're going to come back. Because this lift hill isn't super steep, and because we didn't go very wide here, we're going to intersect the lift hill further back, but we will try and skirt around over top. I do kind of want that little bit of airtime here over top of this hill. Well, now banking wise, there was a fair bit of variation in the way that the banking was done. Sometimes it was a little bit underbanked, but usually they had kind of appropriate levels of banking for what they were doing. All right, that's just enough to not really get a whole lot of airtime, which is fine. We don't want a ton. Okay. We'll use kind of that as our start here. And then we'll go ahead and turn this down at the bottom. Dinn was not scared of putting corners at the bottom of hills and having a high-speed corner, which is not something you typically want to do on especially classic wooden coasters. Newer designs and newer trains kind of allow for it, but you really didn't want to do that in general, just because it's it just eats up the ride. I mean, it's not great for the coaster at all. But he did it, and so something like Hercules at Dorney Park, for example, became infamous for just being a terrible ride because they had to rebuild the first drop every single season, which not totally surprising. It was taken at high speeds and was not terribly well supported. We'll get a little bit of a speed hill in there. All right, and then we'll level this out and turn the corner. What we want to do is keep it alongside because I want to reuse some of the structure. That's sort of a key thing if you can do it on a lot of wooden coasters, is reuse structure as much as you can. The wooden coasters go by bents, which is what you see here. And a bent is, let me see if, I know I have the scenery for it because I found it 2 streams ago. Where in here? All object. Here it is. So wooden coasters basically build horizontal bends, which is this. Let me turn on clearances. So one of these guys, one of these guys. It's all perpendicular to the track path. So all in a row like this. And then after they build all the bends and connect the track on top, then you have your horizontal stringers, which go parallel to the track. And then you have your diagonal battens, which you see here. Diagonal battens aren't always on all the straight sections like you see here. Usually you see that more on the outside. And then you'll see the structure is built to kind of beef up the lift hill and things like that. Either a cathedral structure where it kind of comes out and sets down in kind of stair step patterns, or you can get into kind of the sloped sections. All right, so let's see how we're doing here on speed. I want to hit this. Oop, that's too much. Fast acceleration. All right, check out this layout so far. So we're crawling over that little hill right there, which is good. We don't want a lot of speed because we're not launching people. We're not talking ejector airtime here. We'll bounce some people around and jostle them, but you're not going to get a ton of airtime. So we're just gonna kind of barely hang it on a couple of those corners. We'll give them a little bit of airtime there, but we'll space it so it's a little bit of a floater. All right, so that's not too bad. I actually want to give it just a little bit more height here, and then we'll call that a day just to give us some stuff to work with. For some reason, Mean Streak and Texas Giants mid-course break run was incredibly long, like way longer than it needed to be. So we're gonna match that. I don't actually know the reason why, but there it is. So we're gonna go way long here, and now we'll go off of this drop, and we will kind of start our way down the here. One of the things that made Mean Streak great was how much pass through of the kind of lower the lower structure there was. So we'll make a nice kind of curving drop through here. And we're at 13 on the mid-course brake run, which means that we're not going to get too high after that now. So we'll go ahead and limit it to that. 8 might be a little fast actually, but let's take a look. Kyle, gotta get that flow right. Was our buzzword discussion yesterday? So we'll do shift this around. I don't think we're gonna have quite enough juice at the end of this. Is it crunchy enough? That's the question. Gotta go for that crunch. Okay, can we... Alright, actually we can slide it right in between the lift hill and the drop here. So we're gonna kind of mirror that hill below, which I kinda like. On 1 second here. I need to look. Apparently my computer is not charging. Ooze. There we go. That would have sucked. I could go with neon grid. Nobody likes the neon grid. All right. A little bit too high there, so we'll just come through here. We can actually We could do something kind of weird like this, potentially. And cross under and over the structure a little bit. See, I like the grass and dirt because it's a little brighter than just the regular dirt, but it doesn't have the weeds like grass does. I can't stand the weeds. I will always take the grass and dirt. Team grass and dirt, I would say. Alright, so we're going to be chugging here, I think, at the end, but let's see how we do. If I could freeze the grass as mowed, then I would absolutely do it. I don't know if you can... I don't think that's a feature yet, is it? Alright, let's go ahead now and back up from where we are. So we're going to get block breaks. Give us a good couple of sections here. Block breaks. Give us a good couple more. And then we're going to see if we can thread it through this hole, which is not looking too promising. What I might actually do, we have 6, 3. We would need one more to cross. Can't do that there, so we'll, actually, you know what we're gonna do? I think we were getting just a little bit ambitious there. See if we can cross at. We can cross there at 6. I don't think I'm going to be able to get up to 6, but we're going to try. If not, we'll just go underneath. So I'm building the brake run up high like this, and a lot of older, well, not older, but a lot of the kind of classic style of wooden coaster building was like this because of the brakes. So they're clamp brakes, which is just friction essentially, and the faster it's going, the harder it is to stop a train, which is just kind of straightforward physics. But if you're going a little bit slower, it's a little bit easier. So therefore, a lot of these companies came through and had higher brake runs. So you hit the thing just a little bit slower, and then once you hit it, then slow the train down. Then you could drop it the rest of the way. All right, so we're going to just go ahead and put this up right underneath the structure, and then really what you do is kind of come back through with some battens and smooth this out just a little bit. Put a couple of other bits on here. All right. And we'll let's see, we're 2 off from here, so what I'll actually do is just kind of do an unbanked S-bend here. Since we're going to be traveling so slowly at the end, we can really just kind of call this a finishing move here up to the top. So not something I would typically do, and I'd probably come back and revise that a little bit, but there's really, especially in wooden coaster design, nothing wrong with a couple of S-bends or unbanked turns like that. So, oh shoot, my computer's still not charging. Give me 1 second here. Let me figure out what's going on. All right. When the thing starts flashing at you and saying, "Hey, your battery's about to die," that's never a good sign. So we're gonna hope that that holds out now. Okay. So let's get back to it. Okay. So we've got. I mean, you can see, especially with 3 trains and a 7-car long train, we've got a heck of a long run here between transfer track, station, brake run, and everything. I mean, if you have the space for it, your transfer track can go alongside the brake run, which saves you a little bit of space. Just keep in mind, and I see this a lot of times when people build transfer tracks without really thinking through where they're going. Make sure that you can get a vehicle to the transfer track wherever it may be. So make sure that you can get a vehicle to that space to pick up the train and take it out to wherever it's going to be broken down for annual maintenance and things like that. If the transfer track is in the spot or the maintenance bay is in the spot where you just can't get to the train, then it's really no use to have it. That will be our first pro tip of the day, I suppose. Alright, so we're going to run up here to our mid-course brake run, which is actually timed reasonably well. There we go. Let's see how bad our pacing is on the way back here. A little bit slow over that corner, but not awful. I think when you think about how bad a lot of these were as far as trim brakes go, the pacing feels about right. Like, it's not the best, but it will work until right there. Yikes. Well, that's not good. Okay, it's fine. Liam, come in with the pro tip: boosters. Gotta have those boosters. And I'm mad it didn't make it. Although, heck, there's a lot of airtime on the end of this thing. Alright, we'll put it back up underneath. So you may not be able to put... there we go. Yeah, Dinn was known for his LSM wooden coasters. World's first. You know, it's interesting, though, that we really... a number of manufacturers have advertised that they can do launched wooden coasters, including GCI and Gravity Group. But we still haven't seen anybody bite on that. I'm not quite sure I want to see it, but it's a thing. All right, there we go. No, wait, nope. They slowed it down too fast. Womp womp. This is the struggle that you have. As long as you can get it up, then you're fine. I just realized that didn't sound right. Womp womp. Lightning Rod is sort of a wooden coaster. Even the ones that aren't the full iBox track from RMC, I have a hard time calling fully wood. I like hybrid as a term a little bit better, just because it's a little different than your standard standard thing like that. The track design and the track make, hey, we made it, and everything else is just a little bit different. So you don't usually associate that, or at least I don't, with your wooden coasters, I suppose. I do my best to catch on. Alright, so we'll call this one Dinn. And remember to turn off caps lock. And then call it Dinn. It already exists. And I'm really striking out today on a lot of things. Alright. Done. Our first one is down already. Done. Okay, so from Dinn, Dinn closed in 1991, and from there, Charlie Dinn's daughter, Denise Dinn, went and formed Custom Coasters International, CCI, and brought along designers from Summers Engineering Group, Mike Boodley and Larry Bill, to become designers for CCI. Now, they were focused on smaller, cheaper wooden coasters uh, like small parks. So let's go back to our coaster database here. Let's get rid of Mean Streak. So CCI did 34 coasters. They actually did quite a few, including 7, I think it was, in the year 2000. So they were cranking them out. But they went from 1991 until 2002 when they went bankrupt. Halfway through building the New Mexico Rattler, which is here. And so they went bankrupt, and Cliffs hired on the builders directly and actually finished this ride in the end. So Custom Coasters did some of their rides with steel structure supports and some of them with wooden supports. You can go either way; doesn't matter. But you can kind of, I mean, it's really just a maintenance choice mostly. There we go. Maintenance choice mostly. Steel structure is less expensive to maintain and everything like that. It's also a little more expensive up front, I believe, than wood, but you can kind of go either way. Their first one was Sky Princess, which is now Kingdom Coaster. And actually, this is my first coaster that I ever rode, so this one has a little special place for me. And they used the PTC trains, like you can see here. These were fixed position lap bars because there was not a ton of airtime on this, not like ejector airtime anyway. But later ones used the PTCs with the individual ratcheting lap bars, or Gerstlauer trains, which they were not terribly well regarded for. I see she picked up on the Gerstlauer of wooden coasters. They will kind of do anything, which is sort of how I would see that comparison being made for sure. Their layouts are a little weird, for one. They kind of go all over the place, but they're interesting rides for sure. So let's pick one that we want to do. They built a pretty big variety, but their smaller, kind of medium-sized ones are sort of more well known than others. And then there's a couple of big ones, for example, like Boss at Six Flags St. Louis, which is just massive and is pretty impressive for one. Let's do something like Great White or Ghost Rider. So you can kind of see in this picture the swoopy corners. So the swoopy corners are really what makes Gerstlauer what it is. So they have a lot of these turnarounds where you go up in the turnaround, you kind of dive down, and then you come back up again, and then come out on the other side. Again, with really low banking throughout. So we'll do something similar to it. And Rampage Megaphobia, that's not a bad idea too. I do like that one. We're a little crooked on here. Let's pull this back. There we go. Okay. Grab our wooden coaster again. And let's start with our station. Keep this one kind of low. Let's go up to a third. 3. The Bob Ross of RCT streamers. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, I like Bob Ross, so I'm hoping it's a good thing. Happy little coasters. Okay. So we're gonna give this just a gray tone because we'll call it a steel structure, even though we're not going to do the custom one right now. We're going to go pick the Gerstlauer trains, and let's go with style 1. So Space K has made 2 different kinds of Gerstlauer trains. You can find them on New Element under Ask the Experts. So you can check those out for sure and download those. They definitely add a lot to what we can do. We're actually not going to use the Morgan trains today, but he did make Morgan coaster trains as well. Let's go one less than 19. So you could really get away with a lot of Gerstlauer coasters without using any banking at all. I mean, you can kind of go back to RCT1 days and just not bank the slope hills or kind of any of that sort of thing. So we're gonna get to see how that does. Yeah, just barely over that. You would see usually on things like that there would be a anti-rollback up at the top just to make sure that the ride isn't going to fully roll back. See how that feels. Kind of cruise over that first hill. Ooh, 18 miles an hour. It's not my favorite, but it's acceptable. Right. No, we're not going to bank that one. We can. This is sort of in the middle of it. So you could bank this one, but not. So sheep, yeah, that's right. The way that bents are designed, um, you you can only kind of trying to think of the best way to explain this as far as a a ledger beam goes. Um, so you can kind of bank a ledger beam. Let's build it like this. Okay. So we've got our piece coming across here, and you have like a flat ledger beam like this. So this would take the track. You build a bunch of these in a row down the line, and that would take the track. Once you go a little steeper, so you can kind of go like this after a while. But when you get to a certain point of banking, such as the real high bank, you can't do a ledger beam between the two because it's just too big. So in order to do that kind of a ledger beam, you have to go through and you put a flat one in, and then you come back in and you put a steep one in place like this. So basically, you're gonna put that ledger beam halfway across a horizontal ledger. So that requires an extra piece of wood and extra time to cut that wood. So that is something that's just going to take longer and is typically something that they're going to avoid. So usually they didn't do it. That's kind of why. DC, that is a little bit slower than I like. You know what? We're gonna go ahead and take chop the top off of that one here real quick. Back. They actually did take some of these corners at surprisingly high speeds for being, you know, what they are. It's somewhat surprising that as many of them are still operating as they are because they really beat up the trains and or beat up the track. So we'll go down here. Most CCIs didn't have a mid-course brake run because they're built for cheap cheap installs. So parks that don't have a lot of money, that are usually smaller, and oftentimes they didn't even have a second train. A lot of times they built a straight section either before or after the lift hill, with, or sorry, before or after the station, with in mind, if the park wanted to add one in the future, then they could do it. All right, and then we'll do another one of these corners down here. Make this a back and forth. See if we can get this underneath the lift hill. Can't actually. Do that. Actually, let's do one more. And that way we've got a place to kind of thread our return run. And CCIs especially too, it's really about utilizing that same structure, following along right next to the other track, because again, it's less bends to put in, less footers to pour, and overall just a cheaper installation. Yeah, so there we go, we made it just fine. Left turn there, left turn there. Let's go back and get to a right-hand turn here. And they are kind of the masters too of undulating helixes, which, for good or for bad, that's another one of their sort of signature elements, which I kind of like. Let's see. I don't necessarily like doing varied corners such as this. What we could do, like that. That final dive down, which is underground, so we'll adjust the ground just a little bit here to accommodate it. I'm a huge fan of CCI coasters. I think they're great rides on the most part. I mean, some of them aren't very good, but I think their layouts were super fun and super interesting and pretty unique on the whole. And so they too would do the higher up brake run. I think we might have the speed for this time. Yeah, we do. Okay. All that block down. Then that would be the brake run there. But since we're gonna call this a early CCI, we can. Great White is a good time. I'm a huge fan. So we're just gonna give this one train because say that this was a small one to begin with. I mean, we could put a second one in there, and then really the way that you look at this with the curve in here is that it would really just be a straight shot between here and here. You just can't do that with RCT elements, but we'll call this our Great White or Great Gray, I guess. Pretty simple layout, not a whole lot to it. CCIs did get a lot more creative than this, so I would encourage looking into some of the other ones that they did, such as like Silver Comet. Or, I mean, they got also way simpler than this too. Sky Princess, now Kingdom Coaster, is real simple. Something like Hoosier Hurricane at Indiana Beach, real simple. Doesn't have to be much. Ghost Rider has a great layout too. That's another good one. Nice little curves here. I did put a flat at the top of each one of these hills. I don't think you need to, but one of the things that always struck me a little bit is how stretched out some of the hills were. Um, they they could easily have squeezed in a number of other hills in some of these instances. Let me jump back over to the database real quick because there's one of these that always sort of stuck out to me. Let's see here. Hurricane at the Myrtle Beach Pavilion, which is gone now, unfortunately. But huge steel structure. A straight out and back wooden coaster with two double helixes on either side. But what always surprised me about this one is just how little the how much space there was, but how little elements they fit into it. So between the two helixes, there was one airtime hill, and it was the most stretched thing, and there was no airtime on it at all. It was just through the structure. You can kind of see the one helix way in the back there, and then this one here. There was one hill between the two, and they could have easily gotten 3, 4, or even more. It's just, yeah, it's pretty bad. Mike Robbins says, oh, I didn't even catch that. That's funny. It is kind of appropriate, isn't it? All right, well, let's jump back real quick, and then we're going to jump right back. So we'll call this one our CCI. I have a couple of photos on the database. Not recently, but I do. All right, so let us jump into next GCI. Alrighty, let me pull back the database. So GCI is rapidly approaching the same amount of coasters that CCI had and doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. They are generally regarded as one of the best wooden coaster manufacturers now. They're probably my favorite. So after CCI folded in 2002, the teams kind of split up. So Denise Dinn went and was hired by SNS to form their wooden coaster division. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Mike Boodley, who I mentioned earlier, came from the Summers Engineering Company. He went with Larry Bill, Mike Boodley went and formed GCI with a guy called Claire Hain. And then Larry Bill went and formed Gravity Group with 3 other guys, Chad Miller, Corey Kuipert, and Michael Graham. So CCI kind of split into 3 companies, into Gravity Group, GCI, and SNS's Wooden Coaster Division. So GCI went for a number of years with Mike Boodley as the prime designer. And he sort of shaped what a GCI coaster is in general. So that was 1994, and their first one was Wildcat at Hershey Park, one of my first coasters also. And really, their big thing was a lot of harkening back to early coaster design with swooping corners and some airtime in and out of the corners, and just a lot of really nice smooth elements. Initially, they used PTC trains, but then developed their own trains called Millennium Flyers, which have now kind of become pretty ubiquitous and are on all their new ones. Jeff Pike took over the design for Mike Boodley in 2005, with Kentucky Rumbler being the first one there. And Jeff and a number of other folks, including Chris Gray, who also worked at GCI, left and formed Skyline Attractions out of Orlando. And they still do all the design for GCI coasters. So GCI coasters aren't actually designed by GCI anymore. They are designed and engineered by Skyline and built by GCI. So there's one of the different things between manufacturer versus designer. So let's start with something similar to this. So we'll go back and take a look at some of these early ones. So we had Wildcat, we have Roar. There was 2 Auroras. There was East and West. Six Flags America and Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Busch Gardens had Gwazi, which was a double, and then they did another double the next year for Lightning Racer at Hershey. And then Ozark Wildcat was pretty nice as well. And then Thunderhead kind of being one of my favorites there. But let's do one of the really early ones, like Wildcat, something similar to that. So let me go back into the game and flip over. I haven't forgotten once today. I'm surprised. Means next time I will forget. Okay. Let's go over here, and we're going to start a little bit up because GCI's had kind of fun free-lift sections. Not all of them do, but most of them do have sort of interesting little curvy bits before the first, or before the lift hill. So PTCs were standard for them when they first started before they developed their own train, and they're going to do 6-car varieties of that, which can fit into 5. It can fit into a 5-aisle wide or long station, so we'll stick with that. We're just going to do something simple, something like that. Start out. And you were looking at yesterday and thinking they were slowing down. I could see it. I mean, they have a lot in the works. And they've done a number of things in China and some stuff like that. Texas Stingray being their most recent one at SeaWorld here in San Antonio in Texas. But they've done a number of others, and I know they've done a lot of proposals here recently. So the hope is to see more. But I think the entire industry is slowing down as far as COVID goes, of course, but a number of others too. All right, so we are going to use the steep corners, which is not something I usually do, but in this instance, I think it's appropriate to do so. And then we'll try and bank most all of our corners now, unlike the CCIs, for example. We're going to go through and bank pretty much everything. Doing that little extra bit of banking on the way in and the way out, just to give you a bit of a push up and out and make it look a little bit smoother. Go. Well, a lot of these earlier GCIs were characterized by some pretty interesting higher structures and corners that were a little bit higher up. And then also the ability to have airtime going into a corner. So you kind of hop up, get some airtime, and then go through the corner. Same thing with on the way down, kind of hop down, get a little bit of airtime, and then go through an element. Not quite. We could do like this instead. 9, which should be all right from a speed standpoint. Let's take a look at it. We're sort of mirroring what we're doing here, but we're going to do this little bit of airtime here, up and in, and then we'll go up and around. So one of the things that I'm not necessarily going to follow here, just because it's a challenge, and I want to spend the time trying to also account for it in the stream, is when GCI does design, they do not do bridging track over corners. So this is something that is a little bit nuanced here. So it's to say basically that when crossing another track, they wouldn't cross it while curving at the same time because it's a structural thing. It's a little harder to maintain, and it's just harder to keep the structure as sound that way. So if you really want to get super GCI points, do it like that when you you cross a structure. A little bit higher. Almost nowhere in early GCIs did you see airtime, like straight up airtime hills. For the most part, it was either corners or airtime into and out of corners, rather than anything that was a specifically straight airtime hill. Write that down. There's gonna be a quiz. So we can potentially do corner, hill, corner. I don't usually like to do that just from a flow standpoint within the game. I don't necessarily like to curve, have a hill, or have some kind of element and then curve again. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit of hill in here, and then we'll come back up and do curve across like this example. And this is probably going to necessitate us moving the station just a little bit. So instead of going in that direction, we'll go in this direction for now. Not to say we won't change it up a little bit later. But you do have a lot of these early ones. Again, sharing structure. Even GCI was less kind of cost conscious and more quality conscious than CCI. Are still going to be paying attention to sharing structure when they can, and just trying to make all that work together. High banking, yes, initially on the GCI, but they didn't go, fully heavy banking until later on. White Lightning and at Fun Spot down in Orlando was their first one that they did with a full 90-degree banked corner, and now they've even done some beyond vertical or beyond 90 degrees, and have done outward banked corners and other things as well. So depending on, this is a little bit on the shorter side at the moment because I was kind of thinking of just bringing it in right here, but see how the pacing is still holding up. Not too bad. So you can see here I have a crossover under a curve, which is not something you would typically do as a GCI, but we're gonna avoid that then. We'll hug this turn just a little bit here. Gotta be 4 clear. Get over the first drop here. We'll kind of try and just skirt our structure for this last little bit here. Hug that one, then we'll cross over here, and then we'll get this guy as well. The only challenge that I have for this is that it's a lot of right-hand turns. So it's a right-hand turn here, another one here, another one here, but I don't dislike that just yet. we can kind of do a couple of different things. We can come cross on this side, or better yet, try and make this work where we're going to cross over on this side. Yeah, Liam, I think this is the biggest downfall as far as making a GCI coaster goes, is it's really tough to get a good feel for um, just a nice flowy layout that doesn't have kind of really awkward curves and things like that at the uh, at the end, because you kind of, you almost are trying to stretch your layout around to just check all your boxes and make sure that you hit each of the different elements, which I don't quite like, but we'll stick with that here. And I think that is something that separates a strong GCI layout from one that's just kind of average. Because you could easily take this diagonal here and come across and then come out into the breaks, but I don't quite like that. So GCI transfer tracks are always the same. There's not a one that I can think of that's different. It's going to be 3 across by however long your train is. So let's say it needs 5 tiles like that. It's going to look just like this. So you're going to put a wooden coaster track on the one side, just like this. And then you'll use the other side for sliding. This whole thing slides across, the train comes on, hit onto the black track, and then it'll all slide back over, and then that train just sits there while the other ones cycle around. So that's how you build a GCI transfer track, and there's pretty much no variation to it. So something to keep in mind as you wrap up some of those. I am really feeling trying to get this across from this other side. That it almost feels too short to me to be able to just come across this way. But I don't quite know if I want to, because we could just as easily as cross that one, try and cross on the other side here, come around and then come in. This is a lot of why I don't necessarily do live stream of my actual park building, because a lot of it's just kind of thinking through stuff like this and spending a lot more time than it probably needs just working through the different layout aspects of rides and how they interact with each other on a space. I encourage you to do the same if you don't, but it's tedious, say. One, two, three, four, five. Could just do a tighter end, but I don't like that at all. For now, just to move along, we're just gonna finish it. What I'm gonna try and do for next stream is come with a better layout. Fix this. So this we're going to infer as an entire tire brake run here along the whole thing. Pretty common anyway in RCT to have diagonal brake runs that are kind of just assumed as such. All right, trains, cars per. I like some of the different aspects of this. I mean, we're definitely getting the initial GCI bit with these higher corners here and then these curves here at the end, but it's not quite the same. But let's watch it. We get that nice drop off of the first hill, and we're going to come through here. That little bit of step up airtime around the corner there. Cross over the lift, which I do like that, underneath the station there. So crossovers are a big thing on a lot of the GCIs, is really keeping that twisted, keeping that train moving, changing directions. You see some more out and back type GCIs nowadays, but initially it was all twister, like fully twisted coasters. Um, you're going to include the weird shuttle gravity group made and the hybrids. I'm not going to do the hybrids. I'm not going to do RMCs right now, but I the gravity group shuttle is pretty interesting, and I do want to do it at some point, but we'll probably pass on that for today. I kind of want to do a weird coasters stream at some point and look at kind of one-off stuff like that, which I would I would do for this one or that one. But it is a fun coaster, actually, the real thing. Um, so anyway, let's we're gonna call that one done. Check him off. Okay, so now we'll build another GCI with a more kind of current layout, I suppose. Let's jump back to the database for a moment and take a look. So Thunderhead introduced what kind of became the main trope of the GCI is the station fly-through. So none of these have a great image of it, but essentially the the ride comes around here and then goes through the station up above the exit track and then out the other side. Pretty cool, pretty loud, especially for the operators working the ride. But it became a big trope for GCI coasters. Not every one of them has it, but pretty much everyone you see in RCT has it. It's how a lot of people say that their coaster is a GCI. So I don't necessarily recommend it if you gotta force it. If you have to force it, then you're probably doing that kind of layout wrong. So we will try and work one through though. There's definitely a bigger variety of stuff as far as newer GCIs go. They do a lot of different things. There's more out and back type layouts with a lot of more twists and things than you would see on just a straight out and back layout. Although something like El Toro at Fresa Park Plum has a couple of just straight airtime hills, even though it does have some nice little twists in it. It's a little cute little GCI. Only 80 feet tall, tiny little thing. But there's a lot to it. Oh, let's get back to here and see what we want to base ours off of. Well, let's just give it a try and start with something here. Let's go over to this side, and I kind of like to start at 3 height usually for stations on wooden coasters, really just because it lets you do the diving unbanked corner right away, and you can be down on the ground, which I do think is acceptable for some wooden coasters for just a moment, not for a long period of time. But I do kind of like that, or it's an okay look, and it's possible, unlike steel coasters where you got to get a footer and a support and everything in there. All right. So we're using the articulated roller coaster trains from the game, which that is the take a shot. That was the first one. That was the first one. We're over an hour into the stream, and I hadn't screwed that up till now, so not bad. But so the Millennium Flyer trains, using the Millennium Flyer, the articulated trains here, come in a couple of different train length varieties, but they're pretty consistent. They're either going to be 12, 8, or 6. So 12 is your standard for a large size coaster. Don't do 10. Make sure you do 12 because you don't really see 10 out there. It's going to look a little long in the game. I mean, it is a pretty big looking ride. It's going to take six pieces in your station to do so, but it was actually the best that I did. Yeah, I know, not awful, wasn't it? I'll take it. But as so 8 or 6, 8 is sort of for the medium-sized coasters. So like Invader at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, that's got 8. 6 is for the little guys. So 6 is for like White Lightning at Fun Spot, and some of the other small ones like that. So they're a lot of fun. I do like the small ones because they can be a little more aggressive with the layouts as far as hills go and things like that. But it's a good time. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of GCI coasters. I like them a lot. All right, so let's I'll curve it around. We'll hit the lift though. Something strange. Okay, let's top it off there for now. For our first drop, we can look at a couple of different varieties of stuff. See if I get another one in there, it's not gonna. But the best method here would be you want a nice twisted curving first drop. We're gonna do something like this, which can look a little bit awkward in a couple of spots, but get a nice twist on the top. Usually, you're gonna see it steeper up top, where we have that first twist, and then it'll kind of pull itself out of the drop while still turning. So that's why we're gonna do it just like this. You're gonna see a lot more speed hills than you might have in earlier GCI coasters. You're also gonna see some kind of weird banking sometimes. I think I'm gonna leave the station there, and then we'll try and work in a fly through to make it happen. So this kind of bit right here, we can take it or leave it, I think, but um, kind of have a couple of like double down almost, where you're gonna kind of hop down, turn, hop down again, and come through here with some extra speed. But on this side, especially going as fast as we do, we want to bank this on the way down, then straighten it out, just because it'll look a little smoother overall. Yeah, just like give it one straight piece, and then we'll do the same one. Right. Do you see much in real life? It's sort of an RCT interpretation of some real life elements. You do see a lot of double downs and things that have a bit of a curve in between some of the bits, um, but you're not going to see it real heavily, or at least not in that form. Usually, it's going to be like you're dipping while you're curving. It's just this is the best way to represent it in the database or database. I'm looking at RCDB. Represented in the game in RCT. So one of the things you want to avoid, especially with newer GCIs, is really not spending a lot of time turning high up. So like I wouldn't want to put this kind of a corner on this whole thing. So like a big flat section like that. I look at the other GCI that we did here where we have this kind of curve and then this lower curve and then we go up again. That's more so what you want to do, but even that they're going to have a little less of now than they might have used to have, and that's just kind of design progression. Um, So it's the more you do with these big fan curves, um, more it starts to look a little like a GCI. So not bad there. Back a bit, and I mean this is exactly kind of what Liam had said earlier. It's just how do you do the endings? GCIs take a lot of thought just as far as the ending goes, the way that they wrap through the structure that they've already kind of done, and how does it best fit throughout. Do they ever have pre-drops? No, not really. Not any that I can think of. They're going to come straight off the lift hill. Really, you're not going to see any wooden coaster with a pre-drop, unless it's just to get something set up. Like you'll see it drop off the lift, do a 90-degree corner, and then have the first drop. But that's not a pre-drop. Um, so that would be something like that. I feel like is the only thing that you're really going to see as far as that goes. Kind of do some curving pieces here, some helix pieces potentially. This lines us up for our station fly through, which I usually recommend at least 2 high above your station, um, generally 3 high. Um, pre-drop. So it's it's kind of nebulous. I guess I wouldn't call that a pre-drop, but others might. For me, a pre-drop is something like you see on the the older B&M coasters, say like Apollo's Chariot, where it drops a little bit off of the lift hill, goes straight, and then has another full drop. And that is specifically for just getting the train off the lift hill before it does its drop, so it doesn't really rack the chain as you pull it down. Um, what For these other ones, it's really just kind of getting the train oriented in the way it's going to go before the drop. So I wouldn't necessarily call that a pre-drop. That's the distinction for me anyway. Put our station exit in there. Okay, so now we kind of fulfilled our duty of getting that in, which is the usual bit there. Again, things that GCI wouldn't do. This curving over top of that section there, but it's it's an issue with everything, Hydro. It's just a matter of how careful companies want to be with things. So like GCI or B&M is very careful about their equipment, so they're making sure that it's it's taken care of really well. Um, so you're not going to see a lot of the issues that you would see on other coasters. And I mean, it's not like a big deal. It's just that the overall wear and tear of the ride is going to be less. So B&M is just kind of a step above as far as designing in that way. But now B&M lift hills speed up as the train disengages it, so it's kind of a moot point at this point. So they don't need it anymore, um, which is was kind of helpful, I guess, in that regard. All right, so let's figure out what we want to do to get this off of the here, so we can kind of curve up underneath. We'll share a little bit of structure here. GCIs hold their speed really, really, really well. So one of the considerations when you're building stuff is just making sure that you can actually get the ride to pace correctly. Just because there's so much really really good pacing with these coasters, so they really kind of hit their second half really well. So it's just something to watch out for as you're looking at these particular rides. Or this is going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, getting a brake run of sorts in here. So your transfer track goes on the brake run that is closest to the station. You don't put it on the first brake run as you come off of the coaster, because that's the brake run that slows down the train. It's not meant to stop it. So you want your first brake run to slow down the train, the second brake run to stop it, and then however many trains you have as holding brakes. So you're not going to put your transfer on the very first one off. So you want to have it on the one after that. So we're gonna have a little bit of extra space here because we need it. So this is gonna be where our transfer track is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Three. Could you increase the ride mass to simulate the pacing? You can, subtly anyway. I'm not necessarily the hugest fan of mass changing, but there's some rides like uh, the B&M Wing Coaster that X7 did that just don't have the right mass, so the thing slows down way too fast. But stuff like this, the wooden coaster, are usually paced pretty well. But you can certainly go back through and um, adjust it. It's not going to be a huge deal. Okay. We're actually going to come back through here. Okay. Quarter curve. We're going to figure out how to get this back. And sometimes what you'll do, I mean, what's easier than other things is just to go in here and build backwards. So we want this to be our final little section here. So the question becomes, how do we get there? Going through our talking heads of how do I work this. We're just trying to figure out what is the next thing. So the station, if you kind of block it out a little bit, you're really going to be using at least this much. I do like to do this when you're building these rides, just to block it out a little bit and make sure that you're not impeding on the space that you would be using for the station with other ride track, so that you don't get yourself into an issue when you have to put theming in there and put structures and different stuff like that. You really want to do your best to avoid all that. Okay, that'll work. We can just adjust this down a little bit. Make that work. Don't ever worry in the game if your stuff doesn't quite work landscape wise. Landscape has subtle variation all throughout, so it's not a big deal to have things like this. Um, just in order to make it work. Um, that's fine. Make Actually, I'm really curious if that's going to work from a pacing standpoint. I don't think it will, but let's take a look and see. GCIs are hard to build, and honestly, I would say they're probably the hardest wooden coaster to build properly. But the result, when you get it right, I feel like is also the best looking. CCIs are almost easier because you can kind of build it almost poorly and then just say, oh, yeah, well, it's like that. That's how CCIs are. And generally, the answer is, well, yeah, I guess so. But for something like a GCI, there's pretty specific instances of when you look at something and you say, well, that feels like a GCI versus it doesn't really fit. Actually, the pacing isn't awful there, and I don't hate it. I think I'm gonna go with it. Off of that corner. Definitely not the smoothest looking layout, I would say, but not first. What we're doing here, real time pacing. Yeah, we'll get a little bit of that airtime here towards the end. I think one of the challenges we have here is there's just not a lot of diagonal. I find that mixing the diagonal in really makes a difference as far as the overall look goes of what you're doing. You really want to mix in that nice diagonal, those diagonal elements, just because they add a little bit of smoothness to your layout, I think. Do it. We need one more. Maybe not. And this is really the fight towards the end of these kind of rides, is just how do you make it smooth enough looking while still feeling correct. I don't like this ending. Um, the pacing is due to less friction. Really, it's just the way that GCI does theirs is just the end of the ride is so much lower than the rest of the coaster, so they spend a lot of time really making their layouts work well from an overall height standpoint, and I think that's where they get high marks as far as design goes. All right, this is another one that we're going to table and work towards later because I'm not a huge fan of this. I would say this is a rather poor representation of a GCI layout, but we do have some of the hallmarks for it. So we have our weird pre-lift, we have our nice curve diving drop, we have our station fly through, we have a lot of these directional change curves. I mean, I would say this little section right here where we're doing a lot of these diving corners, we're alternating with the diagonals, we're kind of coming out of one and going in the other direction. That's GCI. The sort of stuff like this with this helix that's just sort of off on its own, doing its own thing, that has this diagonal here separated from this diagonal. That's not quite what you're looking for when you go through these layouts. So we're You could pass this off as a GCI. It's just not quite the best. Yeah, a little bit slow there. Get our final corner here. We'll come up into the brakes. So hits the brakes a little bit slow, but not too bad. Let's make sure we're on our video circuit block section mode. Close this out. Okay. So we'll call that one a day, even though we're not really happy with it. We'll leave it. All right. 4 down, 6 to go. Not too bad. All right, let's jump back to the database. We'll kill this one. We're going to take a break after we do this next one, so we'll take a break kind of at our halfway point. So Gravity Group. I said earlier that after CCI's demise, Larry Bill, who was one of the designers for Summers, who went to CCI, went and formed his own company. So it was Larry Bill, Chad Miller, Corey Kuipert, and Michael Graham formed Gravity Group LLC, and they started with some pretty substantial coasters. So their first one was Hades, which is a massive coaster that goes through the parking lot of, well, not through, under the parking lot of Mount Olympus Park in up in Wisconsin. So you can kind of see it here. It dives through, it goes all the way under the parking lot, and then comes up on the other side. So really cool, really interesting design. And one of the things that they started doing or introducing, just not only big layouts, but they started doing weird stuff like 90-degree bank corners. So this is Corey from Gravity Group. So this is under the tunnel, which has the lights off when you go through it. But this is a full 90-degree banked corner. They also had outward bank corners and other bits in here that were pretty unique to the ride. Initially, it did not have this roll in it. That was something that was added later, which we'll get to. But this is one of their early models. Now, they did a lot of different stuff. You can really see a lot of CCI in a Gravity Group coaster. So let's go back to some of these. If you look at their early ones, you had Hades 360 Voyage, which is huge and one of my favorite wooden coasters. Both steel structure supports, a lot of airtime and everything. Ravine Flyer, which is pretty well done. It has a bridge over a roadway, which is pretty unique. So they were in the business of interesting engineering structures. So here's this one over Lake Erie, and then let's back it up. So this goes literally over a highway, which is a pretty cool engineering feat, for one. But things like Boardwalk Bullet, which is a really, really super compact, tight ride that almost is sort of a halfway between a CCI and a GCI. Has a lot of these kind of high bank corners, a lot of tall structure, and then a lot of just dives through the lower structure on this whole thing. So pretty neat overall, I would say, on that one. You'll see the name Martin and Vleminax pop up a number of times. They do a lot of the ride direction for Gravity Group, although they also sell their own rides too, and they are the broker for Gravity Group in China for a lot of the rides there. So you can really say that this ride is a Martin and Vleminax that's designed by Gravity Group. So as far as kind of what we're going to do here, we were going to start with a smaller one because Gravity Group does kind of two sort of distinct type rides. Now they're bigger ones, and they also have a really good selection of smaller coasters. Now GCI has smaller ones too, but the Gravity Group Junior ones to me stand out as just a really, really excellent selection of coasters. So like, let's look at this one where this is Wooden Warrior at Quasi Park in Connecticut, which is tiny. It's only like 30 some feet tall. So that's the first drop right there. Little tiny coaster. But it has a ton of airtime. Rides like an adult coaster. Lots of fun. I could ride this all day. It's a great ride. And it's just really, really well done. The same with some of their other small ones as well, like Rorosaurus, which is up at here we go, Rorosaurus at Storyland in New Hampshire. There's also some smaller ones in France, like Timber at Wallaby Rhone Alps, or the oh, what's it called? The Wood Express here at Park St. Paul, which is on the larger end of these smaller ones. It's still on the smaller side, 50 feet tall, but it's great. So we're actually going to start out with one of these small ones, just because I think they're a lot of fun. Um, Let me see if so here real quick is a good shot of the transfer track for this guy. Now some of the gravity groups have more traditional transfer tracks with a sliding kind of thing, but we have this one, which is a switch track, like a flip track, basically, sort of an S bend, and this is really the only wooden coaster company doing this, is Gravity Group. So for the most part, everybody else is going to have a full straight track sliding section back and forth. These guys, not necessarily. This is a nice space saving option here, with this little bit that flips up. So pretty cool, pretty interesting design. And you'll note too that the track stops where the transfer starts, because they have a secondary structure here, so that maintenance can get to the wheels without actually having to deal with the track in the way. Most transfer tracks are like that for steel coasters, but this is pretty new for a wooden coaster design. GCI also does that now too. It's the Night Oscars Wacky Taxi. It is. It's a really cool looking ride, and it's a nice little tiny cute ride, but it's a good time. All right, so let's get our ride on. Let's pick another spot. We're gonna go over here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do first is actually start with the. Oh wait, caught myself. That one's on the fence. You can drink if you want. Okay. Do a nice little turn before our drop here. See, this time I'm not even getting you guys drunk. I'm just getting you like slightly tipsy. Good, right? Let's give ourselves a station here just so that we can start testing this around. So the Gravity Group, when they started, were using PTC trains as well, because that was what was available. Like GCI, they also developed their own trains. They're called Timberliners. So the Timberliners are also articulated and have wheels that actually kind of curve with the ride as it goes along. So a pretty interesting design overall, for these. Um, so we're gonna go with a little 6-car train. Oh baby. Gravity groups are kind of known for their underbanking, and for outward banking, and in some cases overbanking. So really, you can do whatever the heck you want with the banking on these guys. They are spending a lot of time doing weird elements on occasion. Maybe a little bit higher than I wanted. Let's keep it down low. Yeah, these are Space K trains, I think. Yes, they're definitely Space K trains. So again, you can find these boys in on New Element. If you go to the Ask the Experts section, you can find these there. What we're gonna do is a little bit of some outward banked fun here. Go up over this hill. That's at 7, so we'll be a little bit slow top here, but not too bad. Airtime in here. Because this coaster is so small, I'm actually going to go ahead now and take out those straight sections, though we still want one here because this drop is substantial enough. Generally, if you have to have one steep section, you probably ought to have a flat section in between. It's generally good practice. A little bit of cornering here. Kind of do a couple of different things as far as turnarounds go. Just trying to figure out what might be the best option there. I'm going to do a nice diving drop because we haven't done one of those in or else on the ride. But we will go ahead and bank the upside of the hill here just so that we get it a little bit smoother. Let's think about our station position for a minute. We don't have to leave it here. Kind of do a number of different things. We can do sort of a simple turnaround like this. We can do a bunch of different stuff. I do like how that lines up. I always do like when line up nice tracks like that. We'll dive this into the structure just a little bit here. Nice tight little corner here, which, darn, we're not going to be able to do. Oh, we can go a little bit early. Work. So we're kind of doing an out and back here, more than anything. Let for a second. We'll do this instead. Bank this corner. Bank up. We should have enough pacing. That's going to be a little bit slow through the that height, but shouldn't be too bad. Go ahead and do an unbanked corner here. Want to bank our final corner here. And we'll do a couple of these more weird airtimey type things. Put a straight piece in there. So get a little bit more banking on that. You can kind of do opposite stuff back and forth, bank a couple of them one way and then do another the other way, but then we'll just come in here at 2, and at 2 is where we will stop it. So we'll do a little bit of this drop out of the station. Only need 4 as far as your overall goes. We're not going to do that drop just so I can get enough space in here for the station brake run and everything else itself. So 4. Give ourselves a little brake run there. Then we'll do our actual slow down brake run here. We'll call that a day. The 2 trains and let it. What did I do? Did I make these all honest? There it is. Like I had accidentally built those with the chain lift on. So not a bad little layout here. Largely left-hand corners, pretty much entirely left-hand corners, but that's not necessarily a problem. Get a nice little outward bank corner here after that flat one, and then we have a nice driving corner, a little bit slow over that curve. You could easily make that one a speed corner like this one here. We have our outward banked here, nice little up and down. So brake run's probably a little long for what it needs to be, but it's a cute little coaster, and I think works pretty well and would fit very nicely for a small park. The cool thing with this is you could come in here and put your queue line, inside the structure itself. You can make a maintenance. If you wanted to do the maintenance area, you could actually spur it off and stick it out the backside here, or you can put it on the inside here and then just have a road underneath that that hill. But I really like these. Honestly, these are some of my favorite coasters to go ride just because they're little tiny coasters, but pack a pretty good punch, and it can be enjoyed by a young kid all the way up to an adult. So definitely recommend for something like that. All right. Okay, so that's 5 down and 5 to go. Not too bad. So we're gonna our gravity group large. Then we have Intamin kind of traditional, Intamin prefab, SNS, and Vekoma. But we are an hour and 43 minutes into this stream now, so we're gonna take a break. So stop, get some water, go walk around, do whatever. I will run some ads here just to help support the channel. So you should have about a minute of ads, but you won't miss anything. But we will be back here shortly, so hang tight. All right, let's bring it back. Thank you for waiting. and thanks for watching the ads. Again, help support the channel. Another way, if you want to support the channel, you can subscribe now on Twitch and be a monthly subscriber. If you are a Amazon Prime member, you can do that for free once a month. So there's certainly instructions you can find on there if you want to do it, but certainly appreciate it if you feel like it, and it helps support the channel. We're gonna work on subscriber stuff at some point. We'll do something fun or get custom emotes or whatever. I don't know, but we'll do something. Anyway, now let's build a big one. So, kind of looking at a couple of different options here. I actually kind of really like the Chinese ones that they are building right now. So these jungle trailblazers that they've been putting at the various Fanta Wild parks are pretty interesting looking rides because they have an inversion. Now, Hades 360 was the first one that did this, but these guys have done it pretty substantially more. And the Gravity Group were the first ones to do what I would consider a successful wooden inversion. Now, RMC does their inversions, but they're pretty heavily steel, pretty much everything steel. You can kind of see here, these are pretty much all wood. It's wood laminate built up track. It's a steel ledger, as would be expected, but it's a wood inversion. So these, here's a good shot of it. You can kind of see the built up track, all the different layers here, and the structure. It's pretty neat. So would recommend, if you're going to do an inversion on your wooden coaster, make sure that you're doing a gravity group. Unless you're doing something like Son of Beast, which is kind of its own animal there. But if you're doing an inversion, do a roll, because that's pretty much the only thing that these do so far. Not to say they couldn't do others, but it makes the most sense to do a roll. So these are sort of odd layouts for one, but they definitely have the roll in there is pretty interesting, and the rest of the layout doesn't have a huge amount of flow. I would do the Hades 360. I drew the challenge that I have there is that I don't have the parking lot with it, so I'll build something similar that maybe has a little bit more flow, but the parking lot certainly does add some interesting dynamics to it, just because you have a whole big section of the track that's real low to the ground, doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, but is still kind of packed in there. All right, we'll go with our start here. We're going to grab our Timberliner trains again. The PTC trains do not go upside down. So if you're going to use an inversion on one of your rides, make sure that you have Timberliner trains, or if you're doing a different one, you have the proper trains, because PTC does offer a train that goes upside down, but as of yet, no one has bought it. Okay, so we'll get our coaster looking nice. I always like this brown rather than the chocolate brown or the light wood brown like that one. That was too light for me. So most wooden coasters are built of southern yellow pine. At least most GCIs are. It's readily available and cheap, so that's why they do it. Wooden coasters kind of rare in China because there's they really aren't using a lot of heavy dense woods, because China doesn't have those as much there. PTC 360 curse, they do. They're really ugly trains for one, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. But I think they look really awful. Let's do a nice big first drop here. Oh, shoot. Take a drink for that one. That was a long one. I believe nobody caught that one. All right. So let's start with some airtime here, and one of the things that a couple of these rides did was have these weird trick track elements on them that went back to back, that it looks cool from an off-ride perspective, but from an on-ride perspective, it really just doesn't do a lot. Let's turn the corner here. Trying to figure out which way I want this to go. This, and actually what we'll do now is go back through. We're going to take this out, back it the other direction. That way when this other piece goes in, we can back it the opposite direction. All right. Still traveling pretty quick in there, which is good. I want to get that speed up. So the general idea with this one, and there's a couple of ones that come through here. Actually, what I was thinking about, let me at least show you. Let's go back. So we'll look at our GCI list. Unfortunately, they don't have the city on this one. So the one in Wuhu, China, W-U-H-U, which I think is funny, has kind of a neat little this guy right here. So it's an airtime hill banked in one direction, followed by an airtime hill banked in the other direction. I think it's kind of interesting as far as that goes. So we kind of want to do one of these guys here. Now this one does have a space through the middle of it, which from our structure standpoint, we can do that or not. I think it's kind of fine either way. Let's see, Jungle Trailblazer. There's a number of other ones. So this guy's got kind of a nice, interesting layout too, sort of this double out and back style layout. Gravity Group is really the main ones who are sort of leading the way in China at the moment. They're doing more over there than pretty much everybody else is. So they have a lot of these kind of double out and back type layouts, like this guy, which is a clone of the one we just looked at, versus GCI, who's done a couple over there and some pretty impressive ones. The one at Night Valley, which is imaginately named Wood Coaster, is like super good. It's built on the hillside, so definitely a contender for a good ride. So let's see. I wanted to try and work in another or an inversion in here, but we may not get a chance to. So let's go back. We'll do some different kind of turnaround here. That as yeah, that's another one. That is another one. I did miss it. Could come out of the one inversion and kind of come across here potentially. We're gonna again do what we've done before. Pop out the side here. We're gonna build a separate hill here. We're going to go one in because we're going to go a little bit less up. Kind of debating if I wanted to give it a space or not. I'm not going to, I think, in this instance, because I think in RCT it's going to look better with it right up against the structure. That. That's what we need to connect up to. That guy there. Perhaps it's going to make us more sense to turn in the other direction. That clearance probably not going to work. Or it actually will, surprisingly. We can do something similar there. What we could do is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't think this is going to be enough, but let's give it a try. I think this is going to end up looking stupid. Gonna roll in here and then out. So yeah, I think that it looks a little bit weird because we're getting cut up over on this side. Where structure-wise, it's actually not awful. I don't dislike that. What do you guys think? Keep it, or we keep on trying other stuff? Heath. Actually, I'm less of a fan of that than I am of the other parts that we were just doing. Put our hill down on this side. And so we'll go with it for now. Yeah, we got our nice little roll there. We can throw in a dummy track here at some point and get that looking good. We're going to try and share some structure here. One more. There we go. I don't think it's going to let us clearance-wise, but if we could put a diving drop there, that'd be pretty cool. But if we can't, we will leave that alone. While we're trying to figure this out, kind of let's take a look at how we are wrapped around here. The thing is you don't generally want to hide an element like an inversion. I mean, you want it to be really, on the forefront of what you're putting in there. So we want to keep everything low in front of that so you can see it from the pathway. There we go. That'll work. Happy with that. It's a little bit of an oddball turnaround, but you get this cool inversion right here. Whoop. Roll around. Clearances, and we'll go ahead and put this in. Cool. All right, so I did it the wrong way. On right hand, go ahead and put this guy in. So the reason that we want to go in this direction and not any other particular direction is because the way that these rolls are done for gravity group is you turn up into it and just keep on banking and complete the roll, and then turn out of it and come on down. So RCT, it's going to look a little weird because we're going flat first before we go through the roll, but this is how you would do that. All right. Now we can put some airtime hills here towards the end of all this. Kind of do do a number of different things here, but we will go back underneath the structure. Especially with the wooden coaster, you really want to push on the different like passes through the structure and around the structure and things like that. Just the more you can do of that, the kind of better it's going to look in a lot of cases. Change this back to continuous circuits. We can still have our little test guy running. These can be wood structure, these can be steel structure, it doesn't matter. We're already crossing once, might as well do it again. The sort of figure 8 element here. What you would do from a crossing standpoint here, by the way, is you would kind of come through with steel ledger beams and just block out this whole thing when you're actually getting to the theming portion of this. Just take care of the whole thing and then just span it, and that way now you have a double cross here and you only had to do one set of beams. We'll call this the brakes. Get 2 trains on here. Section mode. There we go. Kind of a fast layout. Probably put a straight section in that hill. See how fast it takes it, and then we can decide if we want to go that fast. Has an inversion in it. Yes, I am using OpenRCT, so that is what I would recommend for any building, unless you have to do it on mobile, and then Classic is a good option. But OpenRCT really offers a lot of different features as far as hacks go, and just the ability to do more complicated things in a much easier way. So would highly recommend if you are not already using it. Finish here. This is a little more turn-based than airtime based, which is not quite how a lot of these Chinese ones are set up, but not awful. Do want to add that flat section there because I think it's going to look better. In general, I find the more that I play, the more I like smooth sections at the top of the hill and at the bottom of the hill, especially for things like this, but tend to go in a number of different ways. But we will call that complete for now. Perimeter group large. All right, so there we go. We have 6 complete. Okay, so next up, we're going to look at the Intamin ones. Are we? Maybe? No, we're going to look at the Vekoma ones. Okay, so let's go back and check out. See, actually, I had SNS pulled up next, but anyway, Vekoma. Vekoma only did 3 wooden coasters. So they did Loup Garou Werewolf at Wallaby, Belgium, Robin Hood at Wallaby, Holland, which has now become Untamed by RMC, and they did Thunder Coaster at Tusenfryd in Norway. Thunder Coaster is an interesting one in that if after being open for a number of years, it got retracked by GCI, but then it got new trains by Gravity Group. So 3 different wooden coaster companies have touched this one, and I imagine maybe a couple others as far as track repair and replacement goes. So it's sort of an oddball one. Vekoma, when going way back to the very beginning of our stream here, when Summers engineering firm kind of broke up and went into different areas, a guy named by the name of Dennis Starkey formed what is called the Stand Company, and they did 2 of these 3, so including this one, Stand Company, who did 6 different coasters, including a couple for Intamin. So they did White Cyclone, they did Regina, and then we did Viper here, which is by the Stand Company, and then built by a builder, and the Dania Beach Hurricane, which is the same make as Coaster Works, but was designed by this Dennis Starkey for the Stand Company. So we're gonna do one of these for our Vekoma because they're all 3 were pretty different. The Robin Hood was a U-shaped out and back coaster. This one is sort of like a cyclone coaster, but it's got these sort of smooth hills up and in, so you can kind of see these 2 turnarounds here. Really kind of nice and smooth looking hills. Actually, a really pleasant looking coaster just in general. And has some airtime and has some other bits and pieces. We're going to use the Gerstlauer trains because we don't have these in game. So these have sort of a nice little hood ornament on the front. They're 3 bench, so 1, 2, 3 is how you refer to it. 3 bench trains with 24 people per with 4 cars. So instead of that, as we jump back into the game here real quick, we're going to use 6 of the 2 bench Gerstlauer trains. So hopefully in the future somebody will make a Vekoma one, but until they do, we are going to make do. Okay. Let's find some empty space. Something pretty similar to this. The Coney Island Cyclone has been knocked off as far as coaster design goes more than any other wooden coaster. It is famous. It's a National Historic Landmark in the U.S. And has a steel structure, which not a lot of people know. Steel structure is not a new thing. A lot of the coasters in the 20s also had steel structure because it was easy to put together, and also the sea air has less of an impact on the steel structure than wooden. So Coney Island Cyclone, being as famous as it was, really had a lot of suitors, as it were, and um, we saw a lot of really similar looking rides throughout. So we're gonna do a little bit of steepness here initially, and then we're gonna go through this. So these nice sweeping corners that are on Loop Guru, which I'll just call Werewolf from now on, are really nice. And that what I assume to be, and judging on some POVs, it is correct. Kind of fast, so they have a nice kind of smooth arc to them. I've ridden a couple by Stand Company, including the Dania Beach Hurricane, and they're a lot of fun, and the pacing is pretty good overall, I would say. All right, so there we go. As far as lift hill speed goes, by the way, I mean, default is fine at 5. It's really not going to need to be too much faster than that. A little bit slower than I like. I was trying to avoid using the small corners later on, but I think we might end up having to do that anyway. So this one you could bank, you could not. It depends how you want to do it. You want to be consistent is the thing, but you want to make it make sense. So if you bank low to the ground corners, you should bank other low to the ground corners. If you don't bank the higher corners, then don't bank all of the higher corners. You can kind of you can choose as you go as far as what you actually want to do there. The idea is something sort of similar to Cyclone here, where we would go through this corner. We're going to do some other little bits and pieces here, and we actually go ahead and bank this. Through do something on this side. So you're going to get less speed hills, which is why I just deleted that. You're going to get more of these sort of floater hills like this. Put the station somewhere else for now. See how the pacing is over top of that hill. It's going to be all right. Yeah, not too bad. And then we'll go ahead and do another one of these turnarounds up on this side. I'm gonna leave a gap here. Just so that we can have a return run kind of coming through there. This is what I mean by consistency. I'm unbanking these couple here, but I banked that one, so I probably want to go back and throw in banking for these. Diagonals are hard in the game because you kind of have to pick and choose what you're going to emulate. Are you really intending it as like a full actual turn, or is it just a quick course correction which I think is what you would consider a lot of diagonal elements in this game. We can't necessarily do this the big ones like this, because then we're going to run into ourselves at the end here, or we have this, which is going to offset it. What I liked about that image of werewolf is that it's symmetrical. We're actually going to do this and see how our pacing gets along. Not bad. Not bad. I mean, it's not the cleanest looking with the tight corners in there. I really don't like using tight corners in this game if we can avoid it, but sometimes you can't avoid it. Yeah, Kyle, I think it works all right in there. I like the just trying to match the in-game one. I think it is about as okay as it's going to be on here. Now we can go back and fix this lift hill too. This layer is properly also. Throw that into there. Gotta make sure we give ourselves enough space for a station. We'll stick it over here. And you can do the weird stuff like that. Not out of place, I would say, to have like an S bend here and then this kind of long run to the lift hill. It doesn't have to do a whole heck of a lot. It can just do that and it's fine. Okay. All of that. Okay. Now our next task is to figure out how we cross this section here, which need to properly go down and then come up and cross it with an airtime hill, but that's not going to cooperate. See that this is on the ground here, so let's the things we're gonna check real quick is cutaway view is useful for these kind of coasters especially, which is slightly frustrating to me in this regard because I feel like that clearance works. I think that looks all right, but clearly the game has other opinions. Let's do, because then you have a number of just straight sections coming up underneath, which is not my favorite look overall, I would say. But deal with that. Do another one of these kind of floaty hills here. A little bit of hang time there, not a huge amount. And I don't think, I guess we can still do a turnaround here. We just don't put our flat section in the top. That actually might work all right. Except for That's the challenge that's kind of holding us up on that side. But there's nothing that says you have to do the same thing on all the sides. That's coaster. It is the coaster. It's slightly frustrating that it doesn't quite fit in there. But that's it. The real one kind of has a helix on the outside, so you have this nice compact layout, and then it sort of does this weird helix around the corner, which is a little bit of an odd thing. They want to get on Thunder Coaster or Fruit. I got spited by that one, unfortunately. That was closed when I was there, and the train was partway up the lift hill. And they had said it was going to reopen, but it never did. So I got screwed, unfortunately. I was not a huge fan, although I want to be. I hear that it's very rough and very unpleasant, but it just looks fun. Try and figure out some solutions for what we can do here. And kind of do some weird corner bits and stuff, but and I don't quite want to move the turn, but I suppose I could. Yeah, the layout is solid. I do quite like the layout. It's they do a nice job with it. We are gonna do this. Or no, we're not. That one's in the way. This is the challenge with compact wooden coasters, is sometimes you just can't. Cannot even. Super. Yeah, I can understand it. It's sometimes unless you know how to like really ride a wooden coaster, and there honestly are techniques to properly ride a wooden coaster. Unless you really have those, it can be a brutal experience. So it's something you have to watch out for. All right, we just need to finish this because otherwise we're not going to get anywhere. So let's figure out what we want to do here. Yeah, middle of the car, or I find towards the front is better. I would say that's why I like Mean Streak as much as I did, because it towards the front of the car it was actually a passable ride experience. That was not terrible. So I would say that's probably my recommendation as far as that goes. We'll do this. We're just gonna find out where our lift tool went. Now instead of coming through there with the weird S-bend and everything, we're just gonna do a pretty big outward corner here. And I would say, so on PTCs, in my opinion, the best way to ride a PTC train is to grab onto the front of the car. So each of the PTCs has sort of a handle, like a pad in front of you. Grab onto that, pull forward, and then push up with your feet. And that way, you're kind of you're absorbing a lot of the blows with your feet instead of with your body. So would recommend as a good option. Let's put some brakes in here. Cut that corner just a little bit, that's fine. Call it a day. All right, so here's, you can call it a Vekoma wooden coaster if you want. Not to say that it is, or it's a spitting image of what makes a Vekoma wooden coaster, just because there's so much variety in the three that are out there. But this is something similar to what you would see the Stand Company designing, who did 2 out of those 3 wooden coasters. Thunder Coaster is the only one that was different, but Thunder Coaster has a very, very distinctive layout. It's kind of interesting. It's almost like at right angles to each other. The whole thing is pretty cool, but it uses the terrain really well. So the biggest drop is kind of halfway through. All right, so we have these. This was sort of our goal here, was this nice nested turnaround, unbanked corners there. I could easily see going back through and removing all the banking on these diagonals. I really think you could go either way on it. But we have a couple of nice airtime hills. We have our nice corner here. And then we'll come into the brakes and okay there also. So not too bad, I would say. All that finished. Get in here and pull this out. Okay. 3 more. So next one up is Intamin. Let's go back to our reference points. Get rid of loop guru. Okay, so Intamin. When Curtis Summers finished doing work for Dinn, he went and did some work for Intamin. Actually, around the same time as he was doing work for Dinn, he was also doing some work for Intamin. So, American Eagle at Six Flags Great America, which was the longest drop when it was built at 147 feet. Nice big drop. This was the biggest coaster in the world for just a little while. So that was one of the earlier ones. That was 1981, and one of Intamin's earlier coasters, just in general. You can see Curtis Summers has the contract for the shout out for the designer there. Most of Intamin's wooden coasters ended up going to Japan, and I think they just had really heavy marketing presence in Japan back when they were kind of starting out in the 80s, in the early 90s, because Japan in general has a lot of Intamin products. So they have the most of the first generation drop towers. They have a bunch of second generation drop towers. They have a lot of like looping starships. They have a lot of Intamin products just in general over in Japan. So 4 out of the 7 Intamin coaster or standard wooden coasters came or were built in Japan. So that's White Cyclone, that's Regina, that's Elf, and that's Jupiter, and then also Asuka. So that's 5 actually. Pegasus at Efteling and American Eagle were the only 2 that were outside of that. Unfortunately, Japan's had some trouble over the years as far as sustaining a number of parks, and we've lost 3 of the 5. I saw Regina, and I wanted to ride it, but it was closed for the 2 days around my visit there, so I missed it, and it's gone. I did get to ride White Cyclone, which was great, and I rode Elf, which was fun. Asuka was already gone by the time I got there, and Jupiter was closed at the time, so I didn't end up going to that park. But White Cyclone is an interesting one because it has such a huge structure. So here it is. This was just recently redone by RMC into Hakugai, which means white whale, and is a pretty substantial new RMC coaster. One of the things that's just interesting about this one is just how I mean, how much structure is there for one, and just how much it spends time doing not a whole lot of anything. So, like, these helixes up here were pretty brutal. There was a lot of jackhammering, but they really didn't do anything. Not terribly fast, not terribly, anything really. So, you can kind of see the big helix on that side. There's a couple of big helixes on the other side. I mean, it's an impressive looking ride, but it just wasn't very good. I did not get to ride Hakuge. I've only been to Nagashima on two occasions during one visit back in 2017, I think. Um, so I have not gotten back for it. I would like to, but I was glad that we got to ride this since it had been confirmed that it was closed at the time. The one that I kind of want to base ours off of is Jupiter here, which is another pretty substantial one and one of the earlier ones. You can kind of see how big this guy is. Again, with these high turns that don't really do a whole lot. End where you kind of come up, the turn stays kind of flat, and then you go up again at the end just to kill off a little more speed and then drop. This one's also interesting in that it uses the terrain. And check out this run to the lift hill. So here's the brake run. This all the way down, and let's go back a picture, all the way down, all the way over here, turn the corner to the lift hill. So it's pretty neat. It's just, it doesn't do a whole lot, but it's just a really long pre-lift run, which is unusual for a lot of coasters. So that's why we're gonna take a look at this guy here and see what's up. So let's do one of these guys. Gonna stick here. Okay, back to the game. So these early ones use PTC trains, and we're gonna go with 7 cars, which is generally not typical. You're gonna usually max out at 6, but the big Intamins like Jupiter and all that did use 7. Maybe an Intamin would be a good fit for a Japanese park if I wasn't already far enough through it. Yeah. Although, honestly, now that you say it, I kind of do want to do one. I'll have to think about that. The park is pretty much done, so it may not be a good fit for that one. But I would agree with you. It would be a good fit for that park. Yeah, no, I want to do one. Now you've got me thinking on that. Okay, so let's come off the lift hill. We're just going to do a pretty substantial flat corner here. Then come up 21 and drop. Let's throw in our station so we can monitor this. Take 7 cars like we said. It's going to give us a little bit of extra momentum throughout, which I do appreciate. So as far as these helixes go, we can do a lot of weird stuff. I mean, if you want to do undulations of helixes and stuff, you can kind of do these giant ones. I don't quite like that, so we're just gonna stick with what we're doing here. And this one might be too big also. Nope, we're not gonna do that. I don't know why I missed that I was the same height as the lift. But yeah, you're right. That pre-lift is cool. I've always enjoyed kind of what went into that. I think if we one less, and that happen. Now the question is, are we going to have the momentum to get there? Take a look. Gonna rumble around. Ooh. Oof. Kinda, sorta. Hey, Omega. For stopping by. We are gonna... The question of banking on these is a good one because it's you don't have to. It's a pretty low banked ride to begin with, but the consideration is just where do you want, or do you want it to look banked or do you want it to look not banked? The real banking is probably in between. But well, thank you for the host. So what we'll do is pull this one out just a little bit sooner, just in case we do some terrain with this. This is the real coaster here is huge, like absolutely massive. So why don't we take this? Gonna do this, and I guarantee I'm not gonna have the momentum to do this. So let's station back. Go. Okay. Maybe a little bit too far by putting the full airtime hill in there. Let's take a look and see. We can do it. Yeah, why don't we paint it white? We'll do it. Okay, so we're gonna struggle over that hill, as is expected. That's not gonna quite make that one. We're gonna dump that actually. Not do a full airtime hill here. That way we can still do this. Kind of matches what the real one is doing. Come in and we'll use this as our brake run here. And we can take this and skirt the outside of this big helix. I'm actually gonna to change elevation just a little bit. See if we can get through, which we were just barely out of being able to get underneath or over top of the lift hill there. I was really hoping we could do it. But so it goes, we cannot. We'll and continue our little starter, our pre-lift section here. You kind of want to do a weird long pre-lift. we'll come back to that because part of that's going to depend on where our remaining section goes. I mean, if we're just going to fully wrap this thing around, which I don't think we want to do, or if we're going to go in a different direction. But I do kind of like this, how it wraps around, has our brake run, and then we kind of drop off and do the other side here. We're at 13 there, so that's not going to make it. Honestly, that one's going to struggle too, probably at 8, but that's okay. I want to do some more of these weird turnarounds. Yeah, 8 we're good on. 8 we're good on. Can we get to 9? 10. We'll do this again, kind of like the other one. Okay. I should RMC it when we're all wrapped up. Now what we can do is come through here, or not. Really hoping we would get able to squeeze it. But I think it's not to be in the cards today. I'm going to try and cross over and go that way because we've just been doing right-hand corners here. Actually, this entire ride is right-hand corners, except for the pre-lift. Oops. Not deal. Okay on the smaller ones like we were looking at earlier with that gravity group, but in the larger things like this, you kind of want to not do that. So the question is how do we want to finish this? Oh, good! You just downloaded OpenRCT. Excellent. You will really enjoy it. I think there's a lot of the good features to it. I kind of like this big drop off of the turn here. I think I feel like that's kind of necessary, but we really want to do something. Finish with a right-hand corner. Yeah, I mean I could very easily make this whole thing purely right-hand corners. Ideally, this is going to come back on this side. See what this would look like if we did do. We did properly cross here. The other thing we can do, come through here, go up, and then go down. I want to, if possible, try and make the... Get that turn in there, and assuming that takes it okay. Through here. That way we'll kind of triple stack this helix here. I need to pull out a little bit of what we're doing here. What I'm going to do is... Oh, I don't have to look at that other piece. Hard to see what we're even doing at this point, but block structure here. Okay. And then that will get us up out of there. You're right though. Can't believe I forgot these existed. I mean, I totally did not forget these. Yeah. Oh, this is an option. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give it one more. There we go. Now we're going to do our proper break run here. We'll have block 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Turn the corner. Block. This is running 3 trains. We'll put another block here. Make sure we have substantially enough blocks on here. Back through here. This a block. And since we did say we were trying to make this a little more terrain-like, call this a first of our terrain coasters that we built. There we go. For what it's worth, if you're doing land stuff, and I have been asked to do a terrain coaster stream at some point, and I will, I don't ever use the landscape tool as far as the mountain tool goes. I don't think it's useful because I don't think it gives you realistic looking landscaping. So I just avoid that in general. I prefer something like just big blocks like this that we kind of move in large masses, and then we're going to adjust at some point later. All right, so here we have our Intamin traditional wooden coaster, kind of similar to Jupiter at Kijimakojin in Japan, but also sort of patterned after White Cyclone, also in Japan. But honestly, I kind of like this one. I don't know what you guys think, but so far this might be my favorite one of the stream, which turns out was the Togo one last time, so I think we can sense the theme. But if you've watched enough of this and heard me talk about coasters enough, you know that I like weird coasters, so that is no surprise that this one is one of my favorites. So you are back just in time, Sheep, for the prefab. So have a look at this guy. Crawling off of that lift hill, or the brake run. That's surprising. I'm going to even have the speed. Yeah, no, we got it. Creeping through there, which is appropriate. Finish up here up into the brakes. And actually just in time too, assuming this clears it in time. Has. That's about the perfectly placed mid-course brake run. You never want to actually stop it just in regular operation, so yeah. So we're going to call this White Jupiter, because pretty much what it is. All right. Next. Close this boy out. More. Okay. You're right. It would have been one. It would have been one train operations, or yeah, or two trains, but the other train would be sitting there in the brake run for an inexplicably long amount of time as you wondered what was happening, because the rules will be being explained for the 7th time to this like people who are sitting there. That's pretty accurate for Japan, anyway. All right. Okay. So Intamin also made prefabricated wooden coasters. They made 4 of them. Colossus at Hyde Park was the first one in 2001, and then they had 3 more. Balder at Liseberg, El Toro at Great Adventure, and T-Express at Everland. All 4 still operating, thankfully, even after some extended downtime for Colossus and also T-Express, but they are all opened up and ready. T-Express is sort of Balder with a little bit more. It's actually Balder's layout pretty nearly, with a mid-course brake run where Balder's lift hill would be, and then a whole first half that Balder doesn't have. So let's take a look at this one just because it's impressive. So we have a really, really steep first drop. The thing that made these stand out as compared to the other wooden coasters is these were prefabricated. They were built like steel coasters, prefabricated off in a factory somewhere, bolted together on site. The idea was that they're going to be smoother overall. You could do more things with them, and you could really just make the layouts a lot more extreme and the airtime a lot more extreme. And certainly, if you've ever ridden any of these, you know how strong the airtime is on these. This was the Rocky Mountain airtime before Rocky Mountain airtime was a thing, before Rocky Mountain coasters existed. So you can kind of see T-Express here. It's literally like this is Balder right here, and then this whole bit is a first half that is added to it. So it's pretty impressive. It's a huge, huge coaster. The people that I know who have ridden it have said that it's among their favorites. So I cannot disagree with that. It looks great. I would love to ride it. Really, the thing that sets these apart is their airtime hills with corners to direct you to more airtime hills. You're not really getting a whole lot of corners in general. This is all about your airtime. You can kind of see the differentiation in height from the first hill here to this lift, to this hill, to this hill, to this hill. We really drop off pretty substantially on that first hill, and then lessen on the second and third ones, so that you get some pretty extreme airtime over those hills. So let's jump back into the game. Build one of these guys. Again, we'll just plonk our station down to put it. We are going to use the Intamin wooden coaster trains. Intamin wooden coaster. I believe these were X7 who made these, but I can't recall for sure. We're going to go with a 6-car train, which is long. It's going to be the longest train that we're working with today. But it's still going to fit into a 6-tile long station. We're going to go big with these guys. A lot of these use cable lift hills too, so we're going to crank this guy up to 10 miles an hour. Do it like that. You'll notice El Toro and some of the other ones also have a flat bit on top, and that's to disengage the cable lift. Sort of like a pre-drop almost before you're doing anything weird. So we're going to have that. Yeah, I'll do a pre-lift section. Generally, this is just so that I can get the train testing, so I can at least watch it. Make sure we disengage the chain here. Go through our corners. Actually, a little bit long. That should be fine. So we could do a merge and put a vertical drop in here in the game. I'm not gonna do that because I don't like the look. Just don't think it's quite the right look that we're going for here. So we're just gonna not and hope for the best there. And now we're gonna go much lower on this first hill. So let's kind of see what kind of speed we've got over the top here. That sounds about right. Feels about right. So some pretty extreme airtime. And then we're going to do this sort of twisty bit here almost. Where we go up and into what I think is going to be too tall for a mid-course brake run, but we're going to see. Like I said earlier, I don't usually use the steep twisting section, but if we're doing something similar to T-Express, we're going to need that. Take a look. 37 miles an hour over that hill. It is a little bit stretched, but you're going to get some pretty extreme airtime over that. Not too bad. Actually, pull up in there just around 20 miles an hour, so perfect. Okay. So now we get into the more balder type section, which we're really not going to do a whole heck of a lot with, because I don't quite think you can properly do that in the game. More so, it's a little difficult to do the diagonals in the same way. But we will go ahead and do sort of banked corners like this, but let's put our brake run in. Yep. Okay. There's not a way to not slow it down as much. I mean, you can open the brakes beforehand. I found that I've had some success with that as far as just opening the brakes beforehand goes. But you can't totally kill it. Supposedly, with the new save format, you're going to be able to have some adjustment there, or at least it's going to open the opportunity to create a feature to do that. But at the moment, it does not exist. It's a shame, because it's a pain. So we weren't going to do this, and now we're doing it. But that's all right. So we have our brakes here. Drop down. Pretty good airtime over that hill. Nice corner here. Question is just how do we want to do the remainder here? I don't quite want to drop it down just like that, but yeah, I'm kind of thinking I want at least just a couple of strong airtime hills. But what I kind of wonder is kind of do the turnaround like Alder, but why don't we go back into this section and just throw some good airtime in? Need to do a flat section there in order to get up and over section here. We'll point the top of this hill a little bit. That will get us back. Curve here. There we go. And we'll have airtime on that back side. A little bit far from being able to, well, nope. That. See if we can't go right through the middle. Here's we can't. See what the holdup is here. It looks like it's this main drop there. That's a shame. That would have been pretty cool. So we can't go this way instead. So we have this one that's, what kind of space we've got? We have this one that's here, and the lift hill that's here. This mid course is here. So we actually have two sections worth in between the mid course brake run and the lift hill that we can run back into. Let's do that. Have this pretty low at 6, 8, which it looks like it's around 4 where we are. Gonna get around that, but let's go ahead and put a little bit of pre-lift bit in here. Something on that side. Now it's just a matter of getting up underneath this little bit, which I don't mind putting a bit of stuff like that. One of these pretty wild hills here at the end. And hit our brakes. Okay, and adjust our lift hill just a little bit here. Want to get a nice run up to this lift hill too. Okay. Yeah. That mid-course brake run might be a little bit early as far as this goes. How come are we off on? That's not. Oh, do this one. I was wondering why that wasn't lining up, and what was wrong with my head? I didn't put the lift hill on it. There we go. Okay. Now we're good. Okay. Let's have a look. I always thought the Intamin prefab cars looked a little bit odd just because they were so kind of low seated within the track, and they're definitely low on the riders too. You feel very exposed on these kind of ride vehicles. Crazy good airtime on the top there. But up. Oh, you know, we never did put in the block brakes here. Back it up. Throw those guys in. Yeah, I can, Hydra. Give me a second, and I will look at RCDB, because I think there's some pictures of the one for E-Express. It's really just going to be a curved sliding track, and then you'll have a spur on there. I'll show you that in a minute. Can't believe that made it as far as clearance goes. So because of this one here, A, it's going to stop there, and B, I guarantee you it's going to stop on the mid-course here because we're not long enough for this return run. You'll need to adjust your timings of your dispatches. We're a little ways away, I think. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. So we're probably a good another 10 seconds that you want to add to that dispatch time for something like this. But Intamin prefab is complete. Now, you had asked about the transfer track. Let's jump back over to the database real quick and look at T-Express, because I think there's a photo of it in here. Here we go. So you can see this kind of weird looking track. This is similar to what we were talking about with the Gravity Group, where it runs on a set of rails that let you kind of work on things more easily. So really you have your main line track here, and then the spur is just a curved piece like this. The whole thing slides over, and then your transfer track is over on the side. It's got some tire drives to it on there. So that's pretty standard for what you're going to get. How do you change the dispatch timing? So you just go into the operating options here, the gears, and then you click the minimum waiting time and just extend it out. I don't care if it takes longer than that, but I don't want it to take any more time. Now, this is going to be, I have to open this up in order for it to actually check this out, but so let's see if we've got it correct. We'll speed up time a little bit here. Okay, so now that one's clear before that one gets to the top of the lift hill. Now the question is, will this be returned before this one gets to the mid-course? And I don't think it... Oh, I am. Oop. Okay. while this one's testing again. The gears here, minimum waiting time, just extend this number up. And we still don't have it, so we would need to go probably 25 seconds to do it. Anyway, take a shot for that one. That was a long one, too. Although I don't think my stream is delayed as much this time, so I did change the latency on it so I can have some more real-time chat. Last week it was probably 15 or more seconds delayed. Anyway. So I think this is probably a better option here. So that's off the mid-course before we even really get to the lift hill. But should be closer here to getting this one to park at brakes before the other one is up. Yep, so that's good. We could probably even shave a couple of seconds off of that to really get your dispatch time correct, but we will leave it at that. All right, knock that one off the list. Finally, last but not least, we go all the way back to Dinn again when we started. Charlie Dinn's daughter, Denise Dinn, who ran the company, when she formed CCI after CCI folded, she was hired by SNS to form their wooden coaster division. Stats on this one are not bad. Very high, very high, high. A little bit beefy on intensity, but not too bad. Not something I typically pay attention to, but not too bad. I can handle that. So I'll go for it. All right, and then SNS. Back to the database one more time. 4 wooden coasters were built by SNS. Avalanche, Timber Falls, Falcon at Far Up Summerland, Hellcat at Clementon, and Timberhawk Ride of Prey at Wild Waves in Washington State. They really had some variety to them. There's a fair bit of differences between some. Wild Waves is pretty tame as far as these go. And Falcon kind of looks similar. So Falcon at Far Up Summerland in Denmark is a pretty low, small coaster. Some kind of stretched airtime hills and some low to the ground corners. Not a whole lot going on as far as that goes. To me, where the exciting, interesting things are is Hellcat and Avalanche. And we're going to focus on Avalanche just because I think it's cool. So it's a real short train, little 3 cars of 2 bench PTCs. It's in a triangle. It's entirely left-hand corners. It was pretty brutal, but man, the airtime was great. So you dropped off the lift hill here, and you can see how high the next turn is. It was entirely low to the ground corners, entirely strong airtime, high banked corners. Good ride, just really good ride overall. Unfortunately, it is no longer there. They did close and demolish this coaster, which is such a shame because it was a pretty good ride. Honestly, it was better than anything at Mount Olympus, which was just down the road. So, in honor of Avalanche, we're going to do something similar. Let's start over here. We're going to go backwards this time. We're going to start with our base of our first drop and go 2 back. We're going to keep it relatively small. While I'm in the process of doing this, what kind of things do you guys want to see for next week? Is there a type of ride or something that you want to see some more on? Oh, shoot. Wow. Wow, that was a long time, too. I got like a whole lift hill and a first corner and everything in there before. That was not too bad. That's this. Yeah, if there's anything in particular you want to see for next week, I had a request for weird launch coasters, or just kind of launch coasters in general, which I could get behind. That could be fun. But I'm also open to some other options if you guys have other things you would like to see. So on the whole, these really they didn't have a whole lot of steep hills. When you got your first corner, but then after that it was all like really cruising fast airtime hills on the whole thing. Really stretch corner there. Not my favorite look. But I don't necessarily want to do... Actually, why not? Crossover here. I think the problem, though, with teaching log flume or things like that, I mean, I'm open to it. I certainly would. It's just that there's not a whole lot in the game as far as log flumes go that I think there is to teach. Like they're certainly interesting, but at the same time, um, I think everybody kind of gets log flumes as far as what they can do and what kind of options there are. So I don't know if people would get a whole lot out of that. It's my only concern. It may not be a valid concern, but kind of my thoughts. So we can either go up into the lift hill this way, or something like this. Ah, shoot, I'm just a little too high for that. We can always bring these hills down just a little bit. Hills in instead. Inverts could be interesting because they're tough. I could do well, Vekoma, B&M early, B&M current, Fabry, Golden Horse. You can do some pretty interesting stuff out of that potentially. Um, but Schwarzkopf will be interesting. Yeah, Carry Pro. I could do. Yeah, I guess what we would do if we did that is we would say we were going to do suspended and inverted coasters. I don't necessarily want to say just below track coasters because that opens up a lot of stuff between inverts and flying coasters and suspended, but you could say everything but flyers. May not be a bad idea. Put our little 3-car train in here. Oh, no, not that one. I guess I can't remember the last time that I saw anybody in a realistic park build a Kari Pro ride, so that could be interesting. I guess I need to do a hack for the vertical. Oop, no. Oot. Yeah, that would be kind of fun to do. I mean, you have to really do the vertical. Oh, fast. Uh, you really have to do a vertical lift unless you did something like Pterodon Flyers at Universal, I guess. Um, so the biggest challenge that we have with this one, and you can kind of see it with the pacing right here, is that you're really not getting that kind of wild and crazy ride. You're really getting like a slow cruiser. Let's throw a fourth car on here just to see. This may be one of those cases where you, I think this may be one of those cases where you want to adjust the mass a little bit, just to make it a little bit varied. But not too bad overall, I don't think. And that's a good point. When you put the peeps on the ride, there it's gonna go a lot quicker. And it's not bad, I would say. This has got some decent stuff. Wild Mouse wouldn't be a bad stream, although I feel like it would be a short stream because they're all sort of kind of the same once you do the first one. So yeah, not too bad there. We can throw a second train on there, even though I don't think Timber Falls ever used it. And we'll call that one yes. And let's go ahead and off of that. So by way of review, in case you missed any one particular thing, we started out with our Charlie Dinn Corporation coaster here, like Mean Streak. Did our nice big triangular layout. A couple triangles this one. And then from there we moved on to CCI. I think was the first one that we had done after that. So we did a something sort of like Villain at Geauga Lake or Great White type style. Too bad, pretty straightforward. From there we moved on to the older school GCI, which I know I said earlier in the stream I really wasn't happy with this one. So I might try and adjust this off stream. Like 7 models. Yeah, the B&M ones could be an interesting kind of thing. I mean, you do stand up, sit down, floorless, invert, flying, vertical drop, wing coaster, hyper, giga. Well, they're kind of the same thing. But we kind of covered those in hyper. But I would be interested to do some of the other ones and all that. And you guys are really pushing that, aren't you? One of these days. One of these days. All right, so we had that one, and then we had the other GCI layout here, which I also wasn't thrilled about. So one of these things might end up getting replaced at some point and fixed. The block breaks. That's interesting. Play around with that a little later. And then after that, we looked at Gravity Group. We did our little tiny one, our junior Gravity Group, which I think is good for a lot of smaller parks. And then we did our larger Gravity Group, which is sort of similar to one of the ones done in China. And from there, we went to Vekoma, here, Sand Company. Then we did our Intamin traditional, White Cyclone and Jupiter. We did our Intamin, where are we? Here we are. We did our Intamin prefab, which I think I was pretty happy with this. And then finally, we did our little triangle of an SNS. I think it's I think probably the two Intamins are my favorite of the stream, but I'd be curious to know if you guys have some favorites as well. But that's the whole thing. So hopefully you guys learned something interesting on this one. We will at some point come back and do like a historic wooden coaster stream, like going way back and doing side friction coasters. We'll do some scenic railways. We will do a Traver coaster. We'll do some other fun stuff like that, and I think that could be interesting. And we'll end it up with RCCA and do one of the awful big ones, maybe like a Son of Beast or something. But anyway, like I said before, thanks for watching. If you want to support the channel more, you can subscribe, or if you have Amazon Prime, you can do that for free. So that always helps the channel grow. But I always appreciate you watching. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, go do that. That's where I post all the streams here, and that's where I post ride reviews and hacking tutorials and all sorts of other stuff. That's kind of my primary thing. So go check out the YouTube channel for more content there. As far as these maps, sure, I haven't actually done that so far, but there's no reason why I couldn't or shouldn't. So yeah, I will post them. I just need to get them uploaded, and I will put them out there. So good suggestion. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching, and hope you enjoyed the stream, and hopefully you guys will come back for the next one next week. So thanks very much, and I will see you guys later.